Hi, I'm Katherine. I'm 29, and this Thanksgiving, my dad did something I still can't fully wrap my head around. He convinced my grandma, his own mother, to pay $18,000 for what he called a family trip to bring us closer. But what happened at the airport gate shattered everything I thought I knew about him. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family drama, truth, and emotional courage. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon pie filled the house, but it couldn't cover the tension sitting in the air. That Thanksgiving morning, I stood in Grandma's kitchen, helping her set the table, the same oak table she'd owned for over 40 years. She hummed quietly while placing silverware, pretending not to hear the low voices arguing in the next room. My parents' voices. Again. Just keep your voice down, David. Mom hissed from the living room. I'm not yelling, Dad snapped back. I'm trying to talk about our situation like adults. I froze with a stack of plates in my hands. Grandma looked up, sighed, and whispered, They've been at it since you were little, Katherine. Don't let it ruin dinner. I nodded, but my stomach felt tight. Every holiday came with some version of this argument. Money, bills, broken promises. But this time felt heavier. As the family gathered around noon, Grandma smiled through her worry lines and tried to keep things cheerful. My younger brother, Ethan, scrolled on his phone, ignoring everyone. Mom kept adjusting the napkins like she was trying to fix more than just the table. Dad sat at the head of the table, his posture too straight, his grin too wide. The turkey was perfect, the laughter sounded almost real. And then Dad stood up with a glass of sparkling cider. I've got some good news, he said, raising his glass. A surprise, actually. Grandma's fork clattered softly against her plate. I glanced at her. She looked nervous. Dad continued, his voice warm but rehearsed. Mom and I have been talking. She's been wanting to do something special for the family, something memorable. So she's offered to pay for a full family trip. Flights, hotel, the works. Mom blinked. A trip? To the Bahamas, Dad said, his grin widening. We leave in 2 weeks. A real family vacation. The one we've been putting off for years. The room went quiet. Ethan finally looked up from his phone. Grandma smiled faintly but didn't speak. That's amazing, Mom said softly, but her eyes darted toward Grandma, silently asking if it was true. Dad clapped his hands together. It's happening. Mom already covered the cost, $18,000. It's all set. Isn't that right, Mom? Every eye turned to Grandma. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded her napkin. Yes, well, I thought it'd be nice, she said gently. We don't get much time together anymore. Everyone cheered. Ethan hooped. Mom forced a smile. But I saw the way Grandma's eyes glistened like she was holding something back. After dinner, when everyone moved to the living room to watch football, I stayed behind to help Grandma clean up. She washed dishes slowly, her reflection rippling in the sink water. Grandma, I said softly, you sure you're okay with this trip? That's a lot of money. She paused, setting down a wet plate. Your dad said he'd handle everything, she said. He promised this would bring everyone together. And well, she sighed. I'm not getting any younger, Katherine. I just want to see you all happy. I don't mind using my savings for that. Her voice trembled a little on the last word. I wanted to say something, to ask why Dad was the one arranging things instead of Mom, but she looked so hopeful. So I stayed quiet. That evening, as the sky outside turned dark and the house glowed in amber light, I caught Dad pacing in the hallway, whispering into his phone. Yeah, I'll have it handled before the end of the month, he said sharply. No, I told you. I'll get the rest after the trip. His tone was the same one he used when he talked to bill collectors. He noticed me standing there, and quickly hung up. Katherine, he said, smiling too quickly. You should pack something nice. Maybe a sundress or two. We'll be on the beach soon. I forced a smile. Sure, Dad. But I couldn't ignore the knot forming in my chest. Later that night, while the rest of the family played cards, I sat by the window with a cup of cocoa and tried to shake the unease. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock and faint laughter from the living room. I kept thinking about Grandma, her hands shaking as she folded her napkin, the way she kept checking her purse like she'd forgotten something. Around 10, I went to her room to say goodnight. She was sitting on the bed, counting papers, bank statements maybe. She quickly folded them away when she saw me. "Everything okay, Grandma?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Oh yes, dear. Just making sure everything's in order. You know me. Can't sleep unless my ducks are in a row." But her smile didn't reach her eyes. The next morning, I stopped by her house to drop off leftovers. Her kitchen table was cluttered with envelopes, bank forms, receipts, a few travel brochures that looked printed off the internet. "You really think this trip will fix things?" I asked gently. Grandma looked up, startled. "It has to, sweetheart," she said. "Your father's been so stressed. He said this will give him peace of mind. And I just want us all together again." Peace of mind. The phrase echoed in my head. That weekend, Dad became a different person. Suddenly cheerful, planning, organizing, calling people. He printed itineraries, even sent us group texts about what to pack. For the first time in a long while, he seemed happy. Mom didn't share the mood. One evening, I found her sitting alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with tears in her eyes. "Mom?" I asked softly. She wiped her cheek. "It's nothing. Just tired." But I knew better. She finally looked up and said, "Your father's been promising me for years that he'd change, that he'd stop hiding things. And here we are, another surprise I knew nothing about." I sat beside her. "You don't think the trip's real?" "I don't know, Katherine," she whispered. "But your grandmother deserves better than another one of his promises." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Dad's announcement, Grandma's shaky smile, Mom's tired eyes. Every piece felt off, like a puzzle forced to fit where it didn't belong. A few days later, Grandma called me sounding lighter. "I got the tickets," she said proudly. "Your dad printed them for me." But when I stopped by to see them, something was strange. The airline logos were blurry, the print faint. And the confirmation email she showed me was from a generic address. Nothing like an actual booking. My heart dropped. I wanted to believe it was just a mistake. Maybe Dad used a travel agent or something. But deep down I knew something was wrong. That evening, I overheard Dad again, on the phone in the garage this time. His voice was low, anxious. "No, they don't know anything. Just let me handle it. After the flight date, no one can touch the money anyway." My blood ran cold. He walked back in and saw me standing there. "Katherine," he said, his voice tight. "You shouldn't be listening." "I wasn't," I lied. "Just needed the laundry basket." He smiled faintly, but his eyes were sharp. "You worry too much. It's going to be a great trip." When he left the room, I sat down on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding. The walls of our house suddenly felt smaller. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. Why would he say after the flight date? Why did Grandma's tickets look fake? And most of all, why would he need $18,000 for a trip he didn't seem excited to take? By the time Thanksgiving weekend ended, my excitement was gone. I didn't tell anyone what I'd heard. I didn't want to ruin Grandma's happiness, but inside I knew this wasn't going to end the way he promised. And deep down, I already feared the truth that would break our family apart. The Monday after Thanksgiving, the whole house buzzed with forced excitement. Dad had printed out a packing checklist and taped it to the fridge. It was color-coded, something he never did before. Mom kept pretending to be enthusiastic, asking whether we'd need sunscreen in December, while Grandma hummed by the window, knitting between travel conversations. But under all that cheer, something in me stayed uneasy. I couldn't unhear his voice in the garage. "After the flight date, no one can touch the money anyway." I tried telling myself maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I was overthinking. Yet every little thing in the following days only deepened that knot in my stomach. 2 days later, Mom asked Dad casually, "Did you get the email confirmation from the airline? I want to pick seats next to Grandma." He looked up from his laptop. "It's all taken care of. They're group tickets. No need to pick seats individually." She frowned. "Still, we should have something for our records." Dad's jaw twitched. "It's fine, Laura. I've done this before." The room went silent except for the ticking wall clock. I saw Mom's lips press into a thin line, but she didn't push further. That was Dad's pattern. Speak firmly, confidently, and hope no one would dare question it again. It worked for most people, but not for me anymore. That evening, when he went out to buy dinner, I slipped into his small home office. The desk was a mess, old receipts, unpaid bills, and half-open drawers. My hands trembled as I opened his email. The inbox was full of overdue notices and messages from loan companies. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing, about flights or hotels. My chest tightened. He hadn't booked anything. I didn't tell Mom right away. She'd spent the last week smiling through worry, trying to keep Grandma's spirits up. Every morning, Grandma would call me just to talk about packing or which swimsuit to bring, her excitement as pure as a child's. "Katherine," she said one morning, "your dad said they'll have those fancy breakfast buffets at the resort. I might gain 10 pounds in a week." I laughed softly, hiding the ache in my chest. "You'll look beautiful either way, Grandma. I can't wait to see you all happy," she said. "That's all I've ever wanted." After she hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time, wondering how long she'd hold that hope before it shattered. A few days later, the tension in our house thickened. Dad was unusually calm, too calm, like a man walking on thin ice pretending it was solid ground. I noticed he'd started selling random things online. His golf clubs, his old watch, even our second TV. When I asked, he shrugged. "Just clearing clutter before the trip. We won't need this stuff when we're sipping coconut drinks by the beach." But the jokes sounded empty. One night, I caught Mom crying quietly in her room, holding an old photo album. I sat beside her. "What's wrong?" She sniffled. "It's just your father. Every time I think I can trust him, something feels off. He's been stressed for months, Katherine. He hides things, loans, bills, even letters." I hesitated. "Mom, what if the trip isn't real?" Her head jerked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if he made it up?" She stared at me for a long time, then shook her head as if trying to reject the thought. "No, he wouldn't do that. Not to his mother." But the uncertainty in her eyes betrayed her words. By the weekend, the vacation prep reached full swing. Dad announced we'd drive to the airport together the following Saturday. Grandma had even bought matching sun hats for us. But on Friday afternoon, something unexpected happened. Grandma called me, her voice shaky. "Katherine, honey, can you come over? I think I messed something up." I rushed over. She was at her kitchen table surrounded by papers again. "What's wrong, Grandma?" She handed me a piece of paper. It was a printout from her bank. "It says here that another withdrawal happened yesterday. I thought I paid everything for the trip already." My heart sank. The withdrawal was for $2,000. "Did you talk to Dad?" "He said it was just for travel insurance," she said softly. "But that's strange, isn't it? He said he already covered that last week." I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Grandma, I think Dad's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe you should let Mom handle the money for now." She looked down. "He's my son, Katherine. I trust him." I wanted to scream don't, but I couldn't. Her voice was so full of love, it broke me. That night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dad. "Don't go confusing Grandma. I'm handling things. Stay out of it." My stomach turned. He knew I'd been there. When I got home, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. "You went to see her," he said, not looking up. "She called me," I replied, standing by the counter. "She doesn't need you worrying her with your theories," he said. "Then show me the tickets, Dad," I snapped. "Show me the real ones." He finally looked up. His expression hardened. "You don't trust me?" I swallowed. "I just want to make sure Grandma's okay." His jaw clenched. "You sound just like your mother." I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, he pushed back his chair and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the kitchen light flickered. The next day he acted like nothing happened. He even brought flowers for Mom, and offered to take Grandma shopping for new luggage. But the act was wearing thin. Every smile felt rehearsed, every gesture calculated. That evening, while he was out, I sat with Mom and told her everything. The fake emails, the missing confirmation, the extra withdrawals. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh dear God." "I didn't want to scare Grandma," I said, my voice shaking. "But I think he's lying to all of us." Mom's face went pale. I should have seen it. He's been drowning in bills, Katherine. He borrowed against the house last spring and didn't tell me until the notice came. We sat in silence, the sound of the refrigerator humming like a heartbeat. Finally, she whispered, "If he's lying, we'll find out tomorrow." The next morning, Dad was in unusually high spirits. He made pancakes, joked about airline food, and even teased Ethan about his vacation playlist. He looked so convincing, so normal, that for a brief moment I wondered if I'd been wrong. But then I noticed something odd. His suitcase was smaller than usual, almost empty. "Dad," I said carefully, "you sure you packed everything?" He grinned. "I travel light." Mom gave me a knowing look across the table, her face calm but her eyes alert. That afternoon, I offered to drive Grandma to the airport for her manicure appointment. On the way, she chatted happily about the beach, about how proud she was of Dad for getting things together. When we stopped at a red light, she looked at me and said, "You know, your dad used to save every penny he earned. He wasn't always like this." "I know, Grandma," I said quietly. "People change." She nodded slowly. "Sometimes I think he's trying too hard to prove he can still be the man he once was." That line hit me hard, because that's exactly what it felt like, Dad trying to prove something, not to us but to himself. That evening, as we loaded the luggage into the car, I noticed Grandma had written "Family Trip 2024 on a little tag attached to her suitcase. My throat tightened. Dad came out last, locking the door behind him, humming softly. He looked almost relieved. We piled into the car, and for most of the drive no one spoke. The radio played old country songs, and Grandma kept her hand over Dad's arm, telling him she was proud. The closer we got to the airport, the heavier the air felt. When we pulled into the parking lot, Dad parked near the departure gate and just sat there for a minute, his hands gripping the wheel. "Dad?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Nothing. Just thinking how fast life moves, you know?" Mom turned away, blinking fast. She knew something I didn't. Something she wasn't ready to say yet. Inside the terminal, everything felt too bright, too clean. Grandma's excitement was contagious as she looked around, clutching her purse and passport. But my heart thudded hard when I saw Dad walking ahead of us, no ticket in sight. When the airline clerk asked for our boarding passes, Dad handed over a printed sheet. The woman scanned it, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, these don't appear to be valid." My pulse stopped. Dad's smile didn't waver. "Must be a system issue. Try again." She scanned again. Still nothing. Grandma leaned on her cane, confused. "Is there a problem?" The clerk's polite tone faltered. "These tickets were never confirmed, ma'am. They're only holds." Grandma turned to Dad, her face paling. "David." He forced a laugh. "Relax, Mom. I'll handle it." He stepped aside to make a call, but I noticed there was no number dialed. He just stood there, phone to his ear, breathing hard. That was the moment I knew. The trip was never real. But what he said next, I couldn't have imagined. He lowered the phone, turned toward Grandma, and whispered, "We're not going anywhere." Her lips parted in confusion. "What do you mean?" He looked around like a man trapped in his own lies. "There's no trip, Mom. I needed the money. I'm sorry." The clerk's voice faded behind me. My world tilted, the air around us thickening. Grandma's hand trembled, clutching the handle of her suitcase. She looked at him like she didn't recognize him anymore. "David," she whispered, "tell me you're joking." But he didn't. And that was the moment, standing there in the middle of an airport gate, that I realized our family would never be the same again. The silence that followed Dad's words was unbearable. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of silence that crushes the air from your lungs. People around us moved past, rolling suitcases and chatting about their own flights, completely unaware that our family had just splintered in the middle of Gate 12B. Grandma stood frozen, her hand still clutching the suitcase handle. Her face, once glowing with excitement, now seemed drained of all color. I'd never seen her look so small, so fragile. Mom's voice broke the silence first, barely above a whisper. What did you just say?" Dad didn't look at her. He stared at the floor, his voice flat. "There's no trip, Laura. I couldn't pay for it." I thought I could fix it before today, but I couldn't. Mom took a step closer, her eyes wide with disbelief. You took her money, David. $18,000. You lied to your own mother. Heads were turning now. A few people slowed down, pretending not to stare. Grandma's cane trembled as she tried to steady herself. David, she said quietly, her voice trembling. You told me the resort was booked, that everything was confirmed. You promised. Dad finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I know, Mom. I know I did. But I didn't know what else to do. The sound of her heartbreak was worse than any scream. I felt a sting in my chest, rage, shame, confusion all mixing into one. Dad, why? I demanded. You could have told us. We would have helped. You didn't have to steal from her. He winced, running a hand through his hair. I didn't steal, Katherine. I borrowed it. Mom's voice cut like a blade. You lied about the reason, David. That's stealing. His shoulders slumped. I just needed to buy some time. The loan people were calling every day, threatening to take the house. I thought, if I could invest part of it and flip it fast, I could get it back before anyone knew. Grandma blinked rapidly, her voice faint. You used my savings for a gamble? He nodded miserably. It wasn't supposed to go wrong. Her hand went to her chest. All I wanted was one trip, one happy memory with my family before I'm too old to travel. The words pierced through the noise of the terminal. Even the clerk behind the counter looked away, pretending not to hear. Mom stepped forward, shaking. You humiliated us, David. You let your own mother stand here in front of strangers, believing she was going on a trip you made up. He looked up, desperate. Laura, I was trying to fix it. You think I wanted this? Yes, she snapped, her voice trembling. Because everything with you lately is about pretending. Pretending we're okay, pretending the bills are paid, pretending this family isn't falling apart. He turned toward her, his voice rising now. You think I wanted to ask my mother for money? You think I wanted to lie? I was trying to give her one last memory, before everything came crashing down. She didn't need a fake memory, Mom said coldly. She needed her son. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Grandma slowly sank into one of the nearby chairs. I rushed to her side. Her hands were shaking, her lips pale. I trusted him, she murmured, almost to herself. He was my boy, my only son. Grandma, I whispered, kneeling beside her. I'm so sorry. We'll fix this. I promise. She looked at me, eyes glassy. How do you fix a broken heart, Katherine? I couldn't answer. Dad crouched in front of her, his voice cracking. Mom, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was desperate. I swear I'll pay it all back. She shook her head slowly. You can't buy back trust, David. Not even with all the money in the world. He looked like a man crumbling from the inside. An airport security officer approached, probably alerted by the raised voices. Is everything all right here? Mom nodded quickly. Yes, officer, just a family matter. The man hesitated, then walked off, leaving us in our private storm. Dad rubbed his temples, muttering. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Mom's tone softened, but her eyes stayed cold. You always say that, David. Every time you make a mistake, you swear it wasn't supposed to go this far. But somehow it always does. He dropped his hands. I just wanted one thing to go right. Then you should have started with the truth, I said quietly. Grandma's breathing grew shallow. I handed her a bottle of water from my bag. She sipped slowly, her hand trembling so badly that I had to steady it. Sweetheart, she said, her voice weak. Can we go home now? I don't want to be here anymore. Mom nodded. Of course. She turned to Dad. You're driving. He hesitated. Laura, drive, she repeated. You've said enough. We gathered our bags in silence. People kept sneaking glances as we walked out. Our supposed dream vacation now reduced to quiet humiliation. The drive home was suffocating. The air was heavy, the only sound coming from the rhythmic hum of tires against the road. Grandma stared out the window, silent tears tracing down her cheeks. I sat beside her, staring straight ahead. Every passing streetlight felt like a heartbeat marking the end of something sacred. Dad tried to speak a few times, but Mom's glare in the rearview mirror silenced him. When we finally pulled into Grandma's driveway, the tension reached its breaking point. Mom turned to Dad. "You're going to tell her everything. All of it. No more hiding." He nodded weakly. We helped Grandma inside. She moved like someone decades older than she was just hours ago. The living room that usually smelled of lavender now felt suffocatingly still. Dad sat across from her, hands clasped tightly, and began talking. He told her everything, the debts, the failed investments, the missed payments. How he'd been too ashamed to tell anyone. How he thought he could fix everything with one big win. Grandma listened without interrupting. Not once. When he finished, she took a deep breath. "David, I spent my whole life teaching you that honesty is the only thing that lasts. You lost jobs, friends, even respect at times, but I always believed you'd never lose your integrity. Now I don't know who you are." He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "Mom," he whispered. "I didn't want to lose you." She looked him dead in the eye. "You already have." The words seemed to break him completely. His shoulders slumped, tears slipping down his face. "Please," he choked out. "I'll make it right. I'll get a job, 2 jobs if I have to. I'll pay you back every cent." Mom crossed her arms. "It's not about the money anymore, David. It's about what you took from all of us. Our trust, our dignity, our peace." He nodded slowly, defeated. "I know." The sound of Grandma's old clock filled the silence, ticking away like a quiet reminder of time lost forever. That night, while Dad slept on the couch, I found Grandma sitting alone in the kitchen, her knitting untouched. "You should rest," I said softly. She smiled faintly. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see him as a little boy, running through this house laughing. I don't know how that boy became this man." I sat beside her, resting my head on her shoulder. "People change, Grandma. Sometimes life makes them forget who they are." She sighed. "Then I hope life reminds him soon. Because I don't have forever to wait." Her words lingered long after we both fell silent. The next morning, the house felt different, heavier somehow. Mom was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and firm. I caught bits of her words. Account freeze, police report, documentation. Dad walked in, eyes hollow. "What are you doing?" Mom didn't even look up. "Protecting what's left." He sank into a chair. "You don't trust me to fix this?" She turned to him slowly. "David, you can't fix something by hiding it. You've been doing that for years." He looked away. "I thought I was protecting everyone." "By lying?" she asked. He didn't answer. I stepped outside, the cold air biting my face. Across the yard, Grandma was feeding the birds like she always did. When she noticed me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, sweetheart," she said softly. "The little ones still come, even when it's cold. They don't expect much, just honesty and a few crumbs." Her words carried more weight than she probably realized. I hugged her from behind. "We'll get through this," I said. She nodded slowly. "Maybe. But things won't ever be the same, Katherine. And maybe that's how it has to be." That evening, Dad packed a small bag. Mom watched him quietly from the doorway. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a while," he said. "I'll call when I've found some work." Mom's voice was calm, but tired. "Do what you have to do." He paused, glancing toward Grandma's room. "Tell her I'll pay her back, even if it takes the rest of my life." "She doesn't need your money," Mom said softly. "She needed her son." He lowered his gaze and walked out. I stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street. For a long time, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft clinking of Grandma's wind chimes outside. Gentle, haunting, and oddly final. That was the moment it sank in. The gate confession hadn't just ended our vacation. It had ended the illusion of who we thought Dad was. And though my heart ached for him, a small part of me finally felt something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. We weren't the perfect family. We weren't even close. But at least now we knew the truth. The wind that night howled through the trees, rattling the old windows of Grandma's house. The silence inside felt even louder. Dad's car had disappeared hours ago, but his absence lingered like smoke after a fire. None of us spoke much. We just sat there, Mom, Grandma, and me, staring at the empty spot on the driveway where his car used to be. Grandma finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "He always hated driving at night," she said. I couldn't tell if it was sadness or worry. Probably both. Mom stood by the sink, drying a glass she'd already cleaned twice. "He's not our problem anymore," she said, but her voice trembled. I wanted to believe her. But families don't just stop being problems. They leave pieces behind. Unpaid bills, unanswered questions, and the ache of what used to be. That night, I helped Grandma to her room. She moved slower than usual, her steps unsteady. As I tucked her in, she squeezed my hand. "Don't hate him, Katherine," she murmured. "Hate makes people foolish. That's how your father got lost." I nodded, but my heart didn't agree. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but the house felt gray. Mom was already on the phone with the bank. Her tone was calm but sharp. "Yes, I need to freeze the remaining funds on Margaret Wilson's account." "Yes, immediately." When she hung up, I asked quietly, "Did they say anything about the money he took?" She shook her head. "It's gone. Every cent. He withdrew it in cash." Grandma walked in, wrapped in her robe. "Let it go," she said softly. "Money's just paper." Mom's jaw tightened. "It's not about the money, Mom. It's about what he did." Grandma sighed and sat down. "I know. But I raised that boy. If anyone failed him, it was me. That broke something in me." "No," I said firmly. "You didn't fail him. He made his own choices." Grandma gave me a faint smile. "Maybe. But love makes people blind, darling. And I loved him too much to see who he'd become." Over the next few days, the house filled with quiet routines that felt heavier than before. Mom went back to work at the library. I handled Grandma's medications and made sure she ate. Dad didn't call. Not once. Every night, I'd check my phone anyway, half hoping, half dreading to see his name pop up. It never did. One afternoon, while organizing Grandma's mail, I found a letter from the bank addressed to her. My chest tightened as I read the first line. Account balance. $47.23. That's all she had left. I set the letter down, shaking. When Grandma noticed my expression, she asked gently, "Bad news?" I nodded. "He drained everything." Her eyes flickered with sadness, but not surprise. "I knew," she whispered. "I just didn't want to see it written down." A few days later, Mom came home looking worn. "I spoke with a lawyer," she said quietly, sitting at the kitchen table. "There's a chance we can file a report. Maybe recover something." Grandma frowned. "You'd send your husband to court?" Mom looked her mother straight in the eyes. "I'd send anyone who steals from their family." I watched Grandma struggle with the words. Her loyalty to Dad was deeply rooted, even after everything. But after a long pause, she nodded. "Do what you think is right, Laura. I don't have the strength to fight anymore." The next morning, Mom and I went to meet the lawyer. His office was small and smelled like old paper and coffee. "These cases are tricky," he said after hearing our story. "Family disputes rarely end cleanly. But if we can prove intentional deception, you might recover a portion." Mom nodded. "He tricked her, told her it was for a family trip. That's intentional." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Do you have any written proof?" That question lingered in the air. Then slowly, I remembered something. Dad's old phone call I'd accidentally recorded on my voice memo app while cleaning my room weeks ago. I'd meant to delete it but forgot. He had been talking to someone saying, "Once I get the money, I'll clear my debts and no one will ever know." My pulse quickened. "I might have something," I said. That night, I went through my phone, found the recording, and played it for Mom. Her eyes widened as she listened. This could change everything," she whispered. Grandma sat in the corner knitting silently. When the recording ended, she looked up. "Do what you have to do," she said quietly. "I won't stop you." Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. It wasn't anger. It was grief in its purest form. The next day, we sent the audio to the lawyer. He promised to begin the process immediately. Weeks passed. Winter settled in. Snow covered the streets, and the house felt colder despite the heat. We didn't talk about Dad much, though his absence hung in every conversation we didn't have. Then one morning, Grandma got a call from the bank. I heard her soft hello turn into a shaky, "Oh my goodness." She hung up, her hands trembling. "They froze part of his account," she said. "They might recover a few thousand." Mom smiled faintly. "That's something." Grandma didn't answer. She just stared at the phone. "He'll be furious," she whispered. Mom shrugged. "He should be ashamed, not furious." That evening, Dad finally called. Mom answered, her tone calm but cold. "Hello, David." I couldn't hear what he said, but her face hardened. "You don't get to play the victim here," she snapped. "You lied, you took everything, and now you want sympathy?" She paused, listening. Her voice lowered. "No, you can't come back here. Not now." She hung up without another word. Grandma stared at her. "What did he say?" Mom exhaled shakily. "He said he's sorry that he's sleeping in his car, that he wants to make things right." Grandma covered her face. "He's still my son," she murmured. "No matter what." That night I couldn't sleep. The guilt crept in. Not for what Dad did, but for what we were doing to him. Was justice supposed to feel this heavy? I found Grandma awake in the living room, staring out the window at the falling snow. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She smiled faintly. Mothers never really rest when their children are lost. I sat beside her. "Do you think he'll ever change?" She sighed. "Maybe. But sometimes the lesson comes too late for an apology to fix it." Days turned into weeks. The case moved slowly, but the lawyer sent updates. Eventually, the bank confirmed that $4,800 would be returned to Grandma's account. When the check arrived, Grandma didn't smile. She just stared at it. "This doesn't fix anything," she said softly. Mom placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, but it's something. A start." Grandma nodded. "A start," she repeated. That night, she asked me to sit with her in the kitchen. "You know," she began, stirring her tea. "For years I believed forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened. But I think forgiveness is just letting go of the pain, so it doesn't poison the rest of your life." Her words settled deep in my chest. The following weekend, Mom and I went grocery shopping. When we returned, a familiar car was parked outside. My stomach dropped. Dad was standing on the porch, his hands buried in his jacket pockets. He looked thinner, older, his eyes tired. Mom froze. "You shouldn't be here." He nodded slowly. "I know. I just wanted to see her, to say sorry." Before Mom could respond, Grandma appeared at the door. "Let him in," she said softly. We sat in the living room, the same room where it all began. Dad looked around, his eyes wet. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. I can't live with what I did. I've been sleeping in my truck, trying to find work. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." Grandma studied him for a long moment. "You broke us, David. But you're still my son." He lowered his head. "I don't deserve that." "Maybe not," she said. "But love isn't about deserving." After he left, Grandma turned to me. "You see, Katherine," she said quietly, "reckoning doesn't always come with punishment. Sometimes it comes with humility." That night, I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. Dad's trembling hands, Grandma's calm forgiveness, Mom's silent anger. For the first time, I realized that reckoning wasn't just his. It was ours too. We had to decide whether to live trapped by his betrayal, or to start over. And as I watched Grandma gently fold her check and tuck it away in a drawer, I finally understood what she meant. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of someone else's sin. It's strange how quiet the house feels that morning. No laughter, no smell of roasted turkey drifting through the halls, no sound of Dad humming like he used to when he was trying to look in control. The same kitchen that once overflowed with chatter and cinnamon rolls now echoes with silence. It's Thanksgiving again. A whole year has passed since the airport. Since the confession that changed everything. I pour myself coffee and glance at the framed photo still sitting on the counter. It's from that day, the one Grandma insisted on printing before everything fell apart. We're standing in front of the departure gate, all smiles, holding our passports. If someone didn't know the story, they'd think we were a perfect family about to take the perfect trip. But I know better now. Mom always says time heals, but time didn't heal everything. It just helped me see the truth more clearly. After Dad's confession, everything spiraled. Grandma was heartbroken, not just because of the money, but because she believed in him, believed for him. She told me later she hadn't been angry about losing the $18,000. She was angry that he'd used family to lie. That night, after we all came home from the airport, she sat quietly in her recliner while everyone else argued. I remember the sound of her spoon tapping her teacup over and over. It was like she was trying to drown out the noise. Finally, she just said, "I raised a man who forgot what honesty means." And no one spoke after that. Now, as I sip my coffee, I can still hear those words. Dad hasn't been around since. After the truth came out, that the trip money was a cover for debts, and that he'd planned to delay the refund until after he could fix his finances, he packed a bag and left for a while. For months, we only heard about him through neighbors or distant cousins. He sent one letter in spring. Just one. He said he was working on himself, and that someday, he hoped we'd forgive him. I didn't write back. Not because I hated him, I didn't. I just didn't know what to say. This year, Grandma decided to do Thanksgiving differently. She said, no drama. No flights. No fake smiles. She wanted a small dinner at her house, just me, Mom, my younger brother, and her. Simple food, no big plans. When I got there, she was already in the kitchen, humming softly, wearing her old red apron. The same one she wore the year before. Though last time, she'd been laughing with Dad as they basted the turkey together. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, handing me a bowl of mashed potatoes to stir. Her voice had that quiet calm again. The kind that hides pain behind politeness. I smiled and said, "Smells good in here." She nodded. "It's peaceful, isn't it?" "I like peaceful now." As we cooked, Mom joined in, talking about work and the neighbors and the new bakery that opened near Main Street. She avoided any topic with Dad's name in it. I could see in her eyes she was trying to move forward, one day at a time. But there was a shadow in every silence. Every time the phone rang, Grandma flinched a little, like she half expected him to call. At lunch, when we all sat down, there was an empty chair at the table, Dad's. Grandma hadn't set a plate there, but the space still felt reserved, like no one could bring themselves to fill it. "Should we say grace?" Mom asked softly. Grandma nodded. We bowed our heads. And then unexpectedly Grandma added, "Lord, thank you for giving us peace, and for teaching us that truth, no matter how painful, is better than a sweet lie." The room went still. I swallowed hard. I felt the weight of that prayer press against my chest. After dinner, I took a walk outside. The autumn air smelled like burning wood and damp leaves. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in orange and purple streaks. I remember thinking how calm it felt, how different from last year's chaos. As I passed the mailbox, something caught my eye. A small envelope. My name written in familiar handwriting. I froze. It was Dad's. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at it, debating whether to open it right away or wait until I was alone. My hands were shaking. Finally, I tore it open. Inside was a short note and a photograph. The note said, "Katie, I know I can't erase what I did, but I'm trying to rebuild from the ground up. I've paid Grandma back every dollar. I sent her the receipt last week. I don't expect you to trust me yet. I just hope you'll believe I'm trying to be better. Dad." I stared at the photo attached. It was of him, older, thinner, standing in front of a small workshop with a sign that read Henderson Repairs. My throat tightened. I hadn't expected this wave of emotion. Part anger, part relief, part sadness. I walked back into the house quietly, and found Grandma sitting by the window with a cup of tea. "Grandma," I said softly, Did you get something from Dad?" She nodded. "Yes. A cashier's check and a letter. I deposited it yesterday." Her eyes glistened as she looked out the window. "He made a mistake, Katherine. A terrible one. But he's still my son." I sat beside her. "Do you think he's really changed?" She sighed, the kind of sigh that carries both love and exhaustion. "I think life has a way of humbling people when the truth finally catches them." Later that night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch steps, wrapped in Grandma's old quilt, thinking about everything that had happened. The lies, the humiliation, the anger, the distance. For the first time, I didn't feel consumed by it. I felt lighter. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something close, maybe understanding. Sometimes people fall apart in ways you can't fix for them. Sometimes all you can do is step back and let them rebuild on their own. Around 9 p.m. my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Happy Thanksgiving, Katie. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm thankful for you. I stared at it for a minute, then typed back. I'm thankful you're trying. That was all I could say. All I needed to say. A few days later, Dad stopped by Grandma's house. Not to stay, just to talk. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see him, but when I heard his voice at the door, something inside me steadied. He looked older. His hair had more gray, his clothes were plain, and his eyes were softer than I remembered. He smiled faintly when he saw me. Hey, Katie, he said quietly. You look good. Hi, Dad. I replied, my voice calm but unsure. We stood there for a long moment, both waiting for the other to say more. Then he said, I'm sorry. For everything. For lying. For embarrassing you. For putting you all through that. I nodded. I know. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I wanted to show you something. It was a ledger. Every payment he'd made, every bit he'd saved. Proof of what he said in the letter. I'm not asking for a clean slate, he said. Just a chance to keep proving I mean what I say. I looked at the paper, then at him. For the first time in a long while, I didn't see the man who lied at the airport. I saw my dad, flawed human, trying. That night, after he left, I sat beside Grandma on the couch again. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. Finally, she smiled faintly and said, maybe next Thanksgiving, we'll have one extra chair again. I smiled back, a tear slipping down my cheek. Yeah, I whispered. Maybe. The following morning, I woke early to the sound of birds outside. The house smelled like coffee and pie. Grandma had started baking again. I looked at the photo on the counter, the old one from the airport, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain when I saw it. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, for the courage to face the truth, for the strength to rebuild. Even if slowly, life doesn't always fix itself overnight. Sometimes it just gives you another Thanksgiving to try again. That day, I wrote a short journal entry. Last year broke us. This year began to heal us. Next year, maybe, just maybe, we'll find joy again. And as I closed my journal, I realized that Thanksgiving wasn't just about being thankful for what we had. It was about being thankful for the chance to start over.